And you wouldn't like that, would ya? Ha ha!
Good morning, Internet. Welcome to the kennel. It's Wednesday, July 7th. I'm in beautiful sunny Fresno, California today. Around this time next week, hoping to be back home in so maybe less sunny, but equally beautiful Boston, Massachusetts. Anyway, this morning I wanted to talk about a couple of different things. I wanted to talk about a book. I wanted to talk about a thing that happened, and I wanted to talk about some gear stuff. So first of all, I'm going to talk about a book, and actually it's a series of books. It's called the author's name is SM Stirling. He's written quite a bit of like kind of historical speculative fiction or like alternate timeline fiction, things like that, sort of science fiction-y stuff. But the series that I personally like the most of his is referred to usually as the Change series. And in the Change series, the lights go out. Basically, there's an event that occurs that causes electricity and internal combustion to stop working. So this is a very specific type of science fiction fantasy book, but there's reasons why I've picked it to talk about here. So the first one is called Dies the Fire, and the cover looks kind of like that. I do not have a hard copy of the book, so that's really shitty. I will try and get a better picture of Dies the Fire's cover up on the website. So I mean on the Instagram, so that you can see exactly what I'm talking about. But the premise of Dies the Fire is that in 1998, it's like mid-March 1998, the lights go out and never come back on again. And so the story follows these groups of people, basically two sort of protagonist groups and one antagonist group, and people figure out how to survive. Spoiler alert, basically everyone in the world dies. If all technology cut out, you got to think how crazy it would be now when we're all connected via so many ways on the internet and via so much electronic stuff that runs so many of the small components of our lives, that if that all stopped all at once, things would be really bad really fast. The author does go into, certain issues like sanitation, not crazy deep, but, lack of sanitation causing disease, things like that. But if you know me, you're going to know there's going to be a lot of swords in this bitch. There's a lot of swords. So I was probably like 22 when I read this book the first time. I was working at T-Mobile, probably either Swampscott, Mass or Beverly, Mass, and I was spending a lot of time doing anything but work. So I read a lot, and I got a hold of this book on my Kindle. And so when I started reading it at first, I was like, this is okay. But then it really picks up quickly. There's it's a fairly easy read for a reader, and the pace moves along really quickly, especially in the first book. You go from the lights turn out to action pretty quickly, and this book inspired me really early on, actually, to start looking into historical European martial arts. I became kind of interested in they make reference to it in here only briefly, but it's a group called the Arma, Arma, yeah, run by a guy named John Clements. His stuff was pretty cool and was pretty available on the internet back then. And we're talking about 15 years ago, so a lot of things weren't as easily available as they are now. But that was something that kind of got me interested in swords and things of that nature. Where previously I had begun to train some knife training due to some things that had happened in real life. But as I began to read Dies the Fire, I was like, I maybe should get better with like a longer weapon. And that eventually led me to Dog Brothers. It led me to Filipino martial arts, and led me to full contact stick fighting. The book also led me to, well, you can't see my bookshelf back there, but if you could see my bookshelf back there, there's some survival books, some basic bushcrafting, things like that. Having just a little bit of knowledge of how to not die in the elements is pretty huge. A lot of people wouldn't know that. Understanding about safe water, understanding about like burying your poop, not pooping near your water source, things like that. That's how you have thousands of people die in a refugee camp somewhere, is improper sanitation and water. You can live for a long time without food, can't live for very long without water. There's this thing called the rule of threes. The rule of threes is you can survive about 3 minutes without air, about 3 hours without clothing, or shelter, being exposed, about 3 days without water, and about 3 weeks without food. Now, I say you can survive. That's like you won't die in that amount of time. You're not going to be happy. You're going to lose your abilities to continue to function, which is going to make that death inevitable way before that. Like if you wait 3 days to start looking for water, you're done, dude. Like you need way more water than you think. And it's something that you need to understand how to get and how to make it safe. I'm going to have a sip right now. But 3 more days, baby. I'm good till like Saturday. All right, back to it. So check out Dies of the Fire. If you're literate at all, if you have any interest in, kind of a little bit of an alternate timeline thing, watching, this day and age, it's pretty, the idea of apocalypse seems to be popular with some people. It's a fairly, there's absolutely some horrific aspects to it, but there's also some uplifting stuff. There is a good deal of paganism and some basics of Wicca and witchcraft involved in that book. If that's something that bothers you, here's your fucking trigger warning, pussy. However, it's not entirely, the book isn't about witchcraft. It's not glorifying that. And if you if you read it and you are a Wiccan, please just take it with a grain of salt and handle what you're reading as you read it. And realize this was written by a guy who was getting help, but is not is not a pagan as far as I know. There's one specific tradition that he sort of is working with, and then it branches out from there. It doesn't mean anything to people that aren't pagan, but as the books go on, there's a variety of different religions that come into play, including Christianity, pretty heavily actually. So if you are someone who maybe wouldn't suffer a witch to live, don't worry, Jesus shows up too. Anyway, and then the last thing about it is if you choose to listen to the audiobooks, which are really good, my only critique of the audiobook is the pronunciation of anything in Gaelic is so god awful. That is not how any of those words sound. So if you start reading the book and you're like, wow, I really want to know how these Gaelic things are pronounced, you're not going to find out by listening to the audiobook. So just putting that one out there. All right, number 2. I want to talk about an incident that went down. I like that we have all the access to cell phone videos and everything else these days, because it gives me the ability to look at some of these events and be like, oh God, how did this happen? This one, all right, I want to preface this by saying I love Joe Schilling. And I think morally, and I don't know, maybe morally is not the right word, but I don't have like a big personal problem with what he did last week, but I do want to talk about it a little bit and sort of caution people about this sort of thing. So for anybody that doesn't know, Joe Schilling is a kickboxer. He's a bad motherfucker kickboxer. Can't stop crazy. Seems like a real cool guy as well. I mean, I've heard him on podcasts. I follow him on social media. Definitely seems like a good dude. Last week he was at some kind of a bar or restaurant, and there was an individual there who had made quite a pest of himself. He was bothering the staff. He wouldn't leave. And somewhere in the altercation, he was drunk and he was singing karaoke, and somewhere along the line he had made eye contact with Joe Schilling and had been kind of like singing to him or whatever. Well, okay, it's fine. The guy's a dick. If you go to drinking establishments, I don't know how many of you have ever hung out in places where people drink alcohol, but like people behave like shit. It happens. Just is what it is. It's usually why you have bouncers. But this guy continued his ways. His report that he used a racial slur when he was talking to a busboy, just a bunch of generally shitty all-around behavior. And so this video surfaces, and it's Joe coming back from either being outside smoking a cigarette or going to the bathroom or whatever, and he's walking through the restaurant. And you can see this guy. You could tell who like is the focus of the video, and the dude's definitely drunk. He's wearing kind of business attire, holding court, and Joe kind of goes by him and he bumps him a little and he says, "I'm sorry." And the guy says something back, and you can see him sort of acknowledge it. And as he's walking away, the guy says something else and he turns back. And when he turns back, the other guy bows up to him. That's not a good idea, like in general, but it's part of the monkey dance. It's part of social violence for men. Well, Joe Schilling wasn't playing that shit. As soon as the guy bowed up, I don't think he even got the full 3-piece, and he definitely didn't hang around long enough for a soda. That guy was asleep on the floor in a second. So what's the problem here? There's a couple of problems as far as how I see what I've seen. Problem number one being Joe Schilling is a professional people fucker upper. Okay. People know who he is, and he is publicly out there. So anytime you're publicly out there, you need to think twice before getting into a violent confrontation anyway, because the fact that you project violence into the world through digital means or whatever means that people are going to look at you a little bit differently, especially people that are not also in some sort of a world of violence. They're going to see you as looking for trouble no matter what. Based on the fact that the video kicked on looking right at the guy immediately before Joe Schilling beats the crap out of him, like almost also looks kind of like a setup, like he knew he was going to do that, in which case that's kind of not cool. If your reaction to someone doing this is to hit them, don't fucking come at somebody like that. Like you get hit for that, that's your problem. However, it did look a little bit like a setup to me. Now this guy might have deserved that, right? I'm not someone who's like, no one deserves violence. Yeah, well, no, a lot of people do. Various degrees of violence. Like I'm kind of the mind that not hitting our kids for like the last 40 fucking years kind of got us to where we are today. But that's another story. That's not an indictment to beat your kids, by the way. I'm just saying, like, maybe a spanking once in a while, as opposed to like, oh, I'm sorry, Aiden, you can't use your fucking iPhone for 10 minutes. Oh, you're crying? Fucking Taylor? Okay, here's your iPad back. Cut it out. Taylor and Aiden can both have a SWAT and go the fuck to bed without dinner, as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, so yes, a lot of people deserve to be punched in the face. However, if you choose to be the instrument of someone else's karma, that's not good for your own, right? Like you're Joe Schilling knew he could kill that guy, and I'm not being facetious. Like he could have killed that dude. They were not the same kind of thing. I'll put it this way: I wouldn't start shit with somebody that looked like Joe Schilling. I would see the signs and be like, oh yeah, no way. I don't want to get into it with that guy. Like that's a bad idea. And if I was working, if I were the bouncer at that point and I had to remove him because, like, let's be honest, what he did was assault. He assaulted a guy. And at that point, like, the restaurant should have removed him and called the police. I don't know from that point what did happen. The video cuts out when right after the other guy's consciousness cuts out. So for me, if I were working, if I were the doorman, yeah, man, like I got to do something now. And the last thing I want to do is tangle with a professional fucking kickboxer. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit and just say, if you are someone who's out there and can wreck people like that, even if they deserve it, please think twice. There's a bunch of issues that can arise. Number one, you get sued, especially if you tape it. I'm sorry, video record it. We don't use tape anymore. Shows how old I am. Especially if you record it, you're setting yourself up. That recording is going to be Exhibit A. If you have got any kind of an online presence, if you have got a school, whatever, anytime you use violence in the real world, in the Western world, in America especially, I'm assuming Canada as well, you may be held accountable for it. So the optics of the situation really matter. And when a guy who's real fit and wearing a shirt that says like, I'll fight you in the ring, in the cage, in the parking lot, or in the bar, when you knock out some drunk businessman, like, doesn't look good. That said, from the story that I heard, the guy had it coming, and it seemed like Joe, regulated, which watch the video. I'll post it up on my Instagram as well today so that you can reference it. But yeah, doesn't look great if you know what's going on. But at the same time, I hope that guy reevaluates his behavior, and I hope he didn't have to have his jaw wired shut or anything. Nobody, unless you do something real awful, no one deserves to wake up after a night of drinking with their jaw wired shut or having a severe concussion or something like that. A hangover is usually enough. And the possibility of being like, I did what last night? I'm sorry. But yeah, anyway, cool. So that's enough Joe Schilling. The other thing I wanted to talk about was I've said that I would talk about gear and some EDC stuff that I would carry around, things like that. So today I want to talk about little flashlights. I have been carrying a small flashlight, about half the size of a standard writing pen, for years. Having something about that size. This is two different models. This one is a Streamlight, and then this one is Olight. There's pros and cons to both of them. The little Streamlight here, so both of these flashlights are battery operated models. They both take a single AAA battery. They're both around the same size. I forget the lumens on each one. They don't say, I don't think, right on there. But anyway, so the Streamlight MicroStream I've carried for a long time. I don't know when I got my first one. I'd have to look back through my Amazon. But Streamlight MicroStream is about half the size of a standard pen. Right, takes a tiny little battery. They do make USB charging versions of both of these flashlights, I believe, so that you can plug them right in. For a tiny little light that runs off of a single battery, they're very, very powerful. Both of these models have a little clip on them. I don't know if you can see, right? They have a little clip on them that clips on your pocket real good. But also, of course, I don't have a baseball hat right here to hand. Oh, I do. Yeah. But also, both of these models clip like this onto a hat.
right? So you've got a makeshift headlamp if you're, doing stuff. I started carrying one of these things when I was doing fire sprinkler stuff. I think I had one a little bit before that, but just so that I always had a flashlight. There's certain items, flashlight, a pocket knife, and a lighter. Like, I just always have, usually a pen as well. And I know there are people who get through their day-to-day life without any of that stuff. They're like, why do I need those things? I guarantee if you start carrying a flashlight, a pen, a lighter, and a knife, you'll use all of them every day. You'll find some reason to use all of those things every single day. And I find the flashlight to be probably the most underrated little thing. People can't, you can do other things. You can get big old tactical flashlights, things like that. I don't carry anything like that because I can fight. Like, I train to fight. And if I'm escalating to a weapon, I would rather just go straight to a blade anyway. But I mean, I feel pretty confident with my hands and my elbows in a regular life event. And then beyond that, like, I can stab you pretty deep with my standard pen. I have a pretty awesome, Kaju Dog gave me an awesome tactical pen, but I lose pens, so I didn't want to lose that one. That one lives on my desk. But the tactical pen, tactical light, they're cool if that's what you want to carry, but I feel they're very bulky. And for their normal purpose, which is writing, making a little light, I'd rather carry a very light, discreet thing. It just makes more sense to me. But anyway, between these two little guys, I really like the Streamlight better. The Olight is like a little bit nicer in terms of its features. It's got two different modes. I don't know if I can, yeah. It's got like two different brightnesses. It's tough to see in here. And it also, it can strobe as well. So I got that. And then, I'm not strobing it. Anyway, trust me, it strobes. I don't know. Maybe mine's broken. But really the two brightnesses are kind of on either side of how bright this one is. So there's like a dimmer and a brighter on the Olight. The real bad part about the Olight is the clip is a big old piece of shit. So this is like my third one of these. I've had like a half dozen of these too. I lose them, I break them, I throw them away by accident, or I give them to somebody. Like, they're under $20, I think. And they last. I put one through the washing machine, it didn't die. But I've lost a few. But the Olights, the reason I've been through multiple is the clips break. It doesn't look that much less substantial than this one, but there's something about the length of it, the type of metal they use or whatever. It'll catch on something and just snap right off or bend. This one, the last two I had both snapped, and then this one bent. And Olight's customer service was kind of shitty when I called them. I wanted just a new clip. I was willing to pay for it, and they were like, "Those are out of stock." I was like, "Okay, when are they going to be back?" I don't know. Check back with us like in 6 months, kind of thing. That's not helpful. Both of these companies, I think, do mounted flashlights on firearms, things like that as well. So I don't know if maybe that's just where their focus is, and they don't really give a shit about guys who buy their little flashlights. But yeah, no, these things are great. They're great to give as a gift. They're great to carry around every day. I keep the ones that I've broken, my two broken lights, live in my tool bags and things like that. So I keep using them. It's a handy thing to have around. Anyway, so yeah, if you're if you're somebody who's new to the EDC world, to carrying around stuff in your pockets, you can't go wrong to start with a pocket knife, folding knife of some kind, a little a little flashlight. My recommendation would be the Streamlight Micro Stream. You can get fancy lighters, whatever. I find your standard Bic lighter to be the single most number one ubiquitous. You can find them anywhere. It's reliable. It will strike every time. You know, like you will see sparks every time, and as long as there's fuel in the tank, she gonna light up. And a pen, right? Just I've also found that having a pen on hand when it's time to need a pen is something that makes other people kind of look at you a little bit more thoughtfully, like, oh, this guy was prepared. It's a little thing and it's kind of a subconscious thing, but like just pulling out a pen, you don't even have to write something down. You just kind of pull out a pen and like, oh, okay. Yeah. Makes people think you're that, you know, that much more dialed in. Not that I'm trying to trick anybody into thinking I'm dialed in or anything, but anyway, well, that's what I've got for you guys for my little rabid ramble this morning. Go out there, find Dies the Fire by Stephen Michael Stirling, SM Stirling. He's written a bunch of other books as well, but Dies the Fire would be where I would suggest you start and see what happens from there. That series goes from the day the lights go out until, if you want to read like 12 books, it goes a couple of generations after the change has occurred. So you can see how, you know, different societies have kind of spun out and what they've sort of come up with in the speculative future. Also check out the Joe Schilling video, maybe comment on there and let me know what you think. And then yeah, little flashlights, go get yourself one. My recommendation would be the Streamlight Micro Stream. All right, guys, have a good Wednesday.